Innisville, Ontario, population 36,000, is a town south of Barrie on the western shores of Lake Simcoe. It spreads over 270 square kilometres. Once largely rural, it's quickly transforming into the orbit of the Greater Toronto Area, with a growing population and, not surprisingly, a growing demand for better transit. To meet that demand, the town has decided to do something quite different. Rather than setting up its own bus service, it is partnering with Uber. It's a bold move. Is it the right move? Let's ask. Lynn Dolan, she is the Deputy Mayor of Innisfil. Marcy Birchfield, Executive Director of the Neptis Foundation. Tom Slee, author of What's Yours is Mine, Against the Sharing Economy. And Sunil Johal, Policy Director with the Mowat Centre. And it's really good to have all of you here at our table at TVO tonight for this discussion about how this new, and we shall find out how daring plan is going to work. So Deputy Mayor, let's put you to work here. What's the idea here?
Thanks, Steve. So first, I think you have to understand the local context and what Innisville is. We have 36,000 population, and we're in a large geographic area, almost about the same size as Mississauga is, but with 1/20th of the population. We have about 7, soon to be 8, standalone communities that are scattered throughout that municipality. And between that, knitted together by tens of thousands of acres of agriculture, rural properties, and also a lot of gravel roads. So not totally conducive to a transit service. So what we did is we hired a consultant, as most municipalities do, and we were twice actually, and we got back different ideas, most of them for a traditional fixed transit system.
Fixed transit system meaning a bus route?
Meaning a bus route,
Okay.
a fixed bus route.
And how much would it cost to put in one bus route in Innisfil?
One bus route in Innisville that would service about 20% of the geography would cost about $270,000 a year.
For one bus route, does that include shelters, maintenance on the buses, all that other kind of stuff?
All of that would have to be built as well. And if you really think about it, can you really run a service with one bus? It has to go in for maintenance, it breaks down. So really you were looking at more of the $600,000 model for Innisville.
$600,000. Okay, compared that, $600,000 to an alternative.
The alternative.
Where did Uber come from as an idea?
So when we went through the model of the traditional bus service, we got complaints back from the 80% of the geography that wasn't getting the service saying, hey, what about us? We're having to pay into this service because bus services, as you know, are heavily subsidized by the taxpayers. We're having to pay into a service that is not available to us. So that's when we went back to the drawing board. We hired we got our own staff and a group of community residents that we put on a transit committee. And we put out requests for proposals for something a little different. And we got a handful back in. And the one that we chose and that we're very excited about is the public transit system, on-demand transit system, in partnership with Uber.
On demand, meaning, and let's just do, sure, let's put this up now, Sheldon, because we have, we've got a few options here of how this would work. For example, no bus, call the Uber car, as for those who use the service understand how it works, and for $3, you could go to the Innisfil Recreation Complex or the Town Hall area. For $4, you can get to a GO bus stop along Yonge Street, or for $5, you can go to the Innisfil Heights Employment Area, the Highway 400 carpool lot, or the Barrie South GO train station. Obviously, some of those linking up with other public transit options, which then get you further afield. So that's essentially how that will work. Now, $600,000 for the bus service compared to what will the town spend to put this Uber deal in place?
So what council has committed at this point for stage 1 of this agreement is $100,000. Stage 2, we're going to commit another $125,000.
So a lot cheaper.
Much cheaper.
And goes to 100% of the town instead of 20%.
Anybody in the town can use this service.
One last question before we get everybody else involved here. How are the local taxi services in Innisfil reacting to this development?
Well, I'd be lying if I said they were thrilled about it. They're not. We are in consultation with them. We are hoping that we are going to work out a deal with them where they could get involved with us in the future on this initiative. And certainly we're required by law to have accessible transit, so we will be using our taxi services for that part of the service.
And to the best of your knowledge, is this the first time any of Ontario's 444 municipalities have struck this kind of deal?
I think it is, Steve. I think there has been what they call the last mile, so that there's been issues where they've gone to a more traditional transit service. But as far as a standalone transit service, I believe we are first.
Okay, let's get some feedback. Marcy, you've heard the plan. Initial thoughts?
Well, I think from a short-term quick fix perspective, where there's this growing demand for different mobility choices by the community, maybe this is subsidizing Uber rides in the short term, maybe a good decision is in the short term. But I think it depends on sort of what that partnership looks like, what you're getting out of that partnership in the long term. I think it's who you're actually serving and who the service is meant to serve, essentially. But from a planning perspective, I think there's a growing concern that more and more governments are considering these ride-sharing services as a substitute for some kind of public transportation planning.
Why is that problematic for you?
As opposed to a mix, which Lynn suggested. So it's often seen as kind of serving the first and last mile problem. I think in a growing community, you have to think about long-term whether this particular service, which is a private service essentially, serving a public need, whether it's really serving that segment of the population that really needs the service.
Sunil, your initial reactions?
I think it's great, quite honestly. We often criticize governments for not trying something new, for sticking to the tried and true, but in today's day and age, many governments are facing a fiscal crunch. They're facing a citizenry which is expecting more services, better services, on-demand services. And given the context that the Deputy Mayor has outlined, I think that this type of service actually is going to serve more citizens more effectively and at a better price than any of the alternatives that are on the table for them. So I think we should really commend the Deputy Mayor and the town for looking at this. Maybe it won't be a long-term sustainable solution, but I absolutely think it's worth a try to see how it goes and to see whether the citizens of Innisfil find this to be a useful service.
Tom, your view?
I'm less optimistic. So I think for Uber in particular, who are casting about for as many ways to make money as possible, this is, for them, I think, a step in the door. They would love to be part of the transit infrastructure of North America. But I think what they've shown over the last few years is that they're not a good partner for that kind of business.
Why not?
Well, because in essence, I think what you end up doing here is, in a sense, offshoring our own lives. Just as if you offshore manufacturing of something, you may get it cheaper, but then there's prices to be paid for that. Are the same kind of environmental standards followed, that labor standards, those kind of things. So what's happening here is that Uber will say, well, we can make a business here by avoiding all kinds of costs, avoiding the costs of properly screening people, avoiding insurance costs, avoiding taxes. And so I think the danger we run is of running down all these kind of standards that is part of what makes Canada, Canada.
In which case, let's ask Deputy Mayor Dolan whether or not the town of Innisville has any intention of passing, as many municipalities have, more and or tougher standards to enable Uber to operate in your town.
So when we originally started talking with them, and we've worked on a memorandum of understanding with a few basic points, one being that one of the critical pieces for us is that we get data from this. We need to know where people are going and why they're, maybe not why, but where they're going and how often they're going and what's attracting them to go to different locations in the town. We've done studies like that before, but it's just randomly asking people where they might go, and this is showing that if they're willing to pay to go somewhere, then we're going to be able to collect that data, and Uber has agreed to share that with us.
Let's confirm that. Uber has agreed, because they're a private company, right? They're normally very proprietary about that kind of information. They have definitely agreed to share that information with you.
They have. That's a critical part of our arrangement, because we need to know that, because if we're getting a pattern showing in certain areas, then, that'll be stage 2 or stage 3 of the plan, is to get a more traditional system.
Okay, let me check that out with okay, because I know one of your concerns is they're unwilling to share that kind of information. You have it from the deputy mayor here that they are. Does that allay your concerns at all?
So I think Uber has in the past offered to share this kind of gross traffic data, sort of anonymized traffic data. I think that kind of effort has turned out to be less exciting than municipalities thought. The first one was with the city of Boston, I think, when they said, yeah, we'll give you all this stuff about who's going where in Boston. And Boston basically backed out after a year or so. They said, it's just not of interest. So I suspect it'll be less interesting than you think. I think Uber is, in other respects, is very secretive. It's very secretive. Well, we don't know much about its finances. We have recently found...
they got a lot of money, Tom.
They've got a lot of money, and they're losing a lot of money. They have $11 billion to spend, and they're losing about $3 billion of that every year. So they're under pressure to find a way to make a profit, and they have not yet found that.
We should explain that we obviously invited Uber to be with us for this discussion, and they were simply unable to make somebody available at the time. I don't think they're boycotting the show or anything like that, but they're just unable to have somebody here. This business of information is key. If they discover after phase 1 is in, Sunil, that they're actually not getting the kind of in-depth, what Uber might describe as proprietary information, what then?
Then look to other alternatives. I mean, I think the good thing that's happening here is they're not locking into a long-term deal. Let's see how this goes. And absolutely, Uber, to say they've had some PR problems and challenges in the last year would be the understatement of the century. And they may not be the best corporate partner for this type of initiative. But there are other ride-sharing firms out there. There are some Canadian ones that are at a relatively small stage. There's Lyft, which is a larger American firm. So
I don't think they're in Canada yet.
They're not in Canada yet. They've committed to coming to Toronto about a year ago, and they still haven't moved in. But the question isn't really about Uber here, it's about ride sharing and ride sourcing generally. Uber's kind of the most well-known example of this, and they happen to be the ones who came forward with a deal for the town. But I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater here, and just because Uber has some problems, we should think that all ride sharing and all ride sourcing initiatives are bad, because I don't think they are.
In which case, let's look at the whole bathwater. I don't know whether we heard Boston was an example. I don't know if you've heard of any other situations in North America where this kind of partnership between ride-sharing private companies and public institutions like towns has worked. Have you heard of any?
Or not.
Or not? Yeah.
So there's an article that came out last year about the town, a Florida town, actually not much different in terms of its situation, is Innisville. There's Altamont Springs, Florida. And essentially, they're a more rural town. That's same kind of thing, that they have a dispersed community, dispersed settlements. They're about the same size. They actually did the more traditional model of having Uber come in as a mix with their transit, because they do have a transit system in place. And I think there was mixed results. Particularly, I think that the town also wanted to know about who Uber was serving. And I think it was a bit of an issue. So, for example, if the town of Innisville is subsidizing all Uber rides, and I know there's certain destinations where there's more subsidy than others, but there is a $5 discount, from what I understand, on any trip within the town. And so, how do you differentiate a trip of, say, a caregiver who's going to a client's house, maybe a senior's house, and can't get to work otherwise through any other service or car, versus a guy or gal who's going to their buddy's house to the Leafs, watch a Leafs game and want to have a few pops, kind of thing. Which trip do you really want to subsidize there? And I think that's part of the question, and you need data to be able to answer that question.
Can I just come back on that a bit? OC Transport or the TTC don't care about whether you're going to the Leaf game or the Senators game, or whether you're going to a bar or you're going to save the world.
But you have a mass transit system in place there, and essentially people are paying to go to different destinations. This is the question of what's the long-term public value for this kind of service, right? And so if you're trying to get public value out of an initial investment, do you want to put it towards something that is a short-term solution, or for some people, or a longer-term solution for the people who need it? I think that's the question.
Lots to unpack here. That's not a bad question. You want to tackle that first?
Certainly. Well, first thing I'd like to say, if we can take any drunk drivers off the road, I am all for that.
The cabs do that as well.
They do, but in this particular case, and it's a stage one. It's the first stage of our transit system, and it's not about Uber or ride sharing. It's about public transit. We have people walking on the sides of roads, gravel roads, open ditches, no sidewalks, going to work, going home from work, kids going to the rec center, pulling a hockey bag behind them. That is happening as we speak. So I guess my question is, if not this, what? And we simply can't afford $600,000 a year for a transit system on top of what everything else that's added on to the taxes for municipalities. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that this is the answer to everybody's transit issue on all 444 municipalities. We are all different, and we have our own challenges, and I think that this is something that we're excited about, and I think that it's a beginning for us. We have a lot of older communities, historical communities, large lots, not the densities that are built today. Are we building in the future for a more urban, dense environment? Certainly we are. We're finally going to be seeing a GO train station. We're so excited. We've been working for years on it. It's on the short list now. They tell us 3 to 5 years. The density around that, it will be transit friendly. We're building walkable communities now, and we are working with all of the developers to make sure that happens. We've just finished a Trails Master Plan, and that is the way of the future.
Okay, Lynn, let me ask you about this. I don't know how you've got it worked, and you'll tell us right now, but certainly in bigger cities, it's very much supply and demand. You know, if you want to take Uber during a very hot peak time of traffic, they've got so-called surge pricing, and you're going to pay a lot more to use the service than you would at 3 o'clock in the morning. Have you got a deal worked out on this issue?
We have. So staff have talked to them about that, and they have agreed not to charge the surge pricing for the Innisfil model.
So it's flat rate all the time, 24/7.
Yes, and what we're also hoping for is it's going to provide some employment for people in the area as well, because right now, as I understand, we only have about 3 Uber drivers that are
doing it right now?
That are doing it. So, but since this topic has been come up, and since we did our public meeting, we have had a number of residents that are very interested in doing this as a part-time job. Perhaps a mother whose kids are at school in the middle of the day, you know, she might be able to augment her income.
I see Tom furiously scribbling notes over there, so I want to know what you've been writing down, because I think you want to come back at the deputy mayor on something.
Well, I think the question of what does it mean for the drivers is a good question, right? And obviously, you know, it's a very tempting thing to say maybe people can make a bit extra money, and that raises the question of, is this a job or is this not a job, right? And from Uber's point of view, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. That is to say, they sometimes claim that these are jobs, but then they say you're not an employee, you're an independent contractor. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is the claims about how well people do from Uber have been sort of, the level's been just going down like that, right? So 2 years ago, it was like you can make $90,000 a year on Uber. This is the end of the poorly paid taxi driver. And that's just come down and down and down and down until now we're seeing stories like, you know, there was a story in, I think, the Washington Post the other day of a woman who was, you know, out of work. She leased a car from Uber in order to try to make a little extra money, you know, then got sick, wasn't able to wasn't earning what she expected and ended up kind of in hock. You know, it sounds like sort of 19th century Britain, where you're always in hock to the factory owner. You know, it's been worse than nothing for her. So I think there is a question there.
That sounds like an isolated case of bad luck as opposed to a system-wide failure, doesn't it?
I think if you look around and you see the places where Uber drivers are now starting to protest against the company, trying to organize in unions, like in Seattle, then I think it's becoming a fairly general thing that their pay rates have been pushed down and down and down.
So Neil, I know you're a fan of governments experimenting and trying this idea. What might concern you?
So I think there's a number of things that we've already heard that could could be of concern. I mean, accessibility is an issue. If we're building public transit and we're funding public transit, we're always wanting to make it accessible. How will Uber
Accessible
do
to
that?
whom?
To folks with disabilities or who might have mobility challenges, for example. So that's a challenge. We also have challenges around take-up of this program. So, I mean, the deputy mayor mentioned there's $100,000 set aside in the first year for this, but Uber is not going to surge price. I don't know how that's actually going to work, because Uber's fundamental model is if enough drivers aren't coming out onto the roads to take people around, they raise the prices to a point where it's palatable to somebody to say, okay, I'm going to get off my couch and start driving around. So I don't know if that model actually works, where there's no increases in price for people. So we might find that there's not enough drivers, or that maybe Uber will raise prices, in which case you're going to burn through the $100,000 budget very quickly. I mean, I think those are all challenges. None of them are insurmountable. And we need to move this beyond a conversation about Uber as a company, which obviously has many challenges and many flaws, and more to a conversation around, for folks in places like Innisfil, how do we make sure they can get from point A to point B in a safe, reasonably cost-effective, convenient way?
I do want to follow up on the first part of that answer, because given that there is going to be a deal now between the town and a private company, this private company does have some public mission as part of its role going forward. And to that end, let's play this clip. We've got Jonathan Kay, who edits the Walrus magazine, used to write a lot for the National Post. He actually, for a piece, went through a training program to learn how to be a taxi driver. And he also spent some time as an Uber driver. And he came on this program a while back and talked about it. We'll play a little clip of that experience, then we'll come back here and chat, okay? Sheldon, go ahead.
If you look at a lot of the pro-Uber columns in the media, they're written by 25-year-old journalists who say, hey, this is fantastic. I took Uber to the baseball game. It was cheap. This is great. Everybody should ride Uber. And it's true. As I say in the article, if you were a 25-year-old going to a concert or a baseball game, you're in the backseat of someone's car. Who cares, like whether the car's yellow or not? However, if you are older, if you have special needs, if you require a car that has any kind of special training or equipment, there is a difference, and that's where the public interest then comes in.
In which case, Deputy Mayor, do you have a commitment from Uber that they're going to take everybody, regardless of disability?
So we're in consultation with the taxi companies now to do the accessibility part of the package. And I understand that this might be new for some of the older folks, but we've got a great library system. We've got groups that come in, of seniors that come in to learn new apps on their phone all the time in the libraries. And we're quite excited and working with many of our community partners to help people who maybe don't have a smartphone, so that they can call in and order a ride.
That's a good point, because you normally you've got to do it on a smartphone, right? You hit the app and you order it that way. But if you don't have a smartphone,
Or a credit card.
or you got a BlackBerry or no credit card, and the BlackBerry doesn't take that app, then what?
Right, so that's still being finalized in the agreement, but what we're doing is we're putting iPads in all of our libraries with people there to help them, plus our recreation center, our town hall, any of the places like that. And also we're looking at having a phone-in option, and we'll do some issue with the credit card, so that we can maybe pay and then they reimburse us back. So all of those things staff are working on right now. There is definitely, it's difficult to be first. There is going to be unintended consequences. There is going to be things that happen that we haven't anticipated. We have never been shied away. We've told our staff we want bold thinking. That's the culture in Innisville, and we're going to work through that. We're nimble enough to make these changes as we go along and to make this work. It's exciting, and we're excited about it. And I think that the residents of Innisville are going to appreciate it. And again, it comes back to, if we don't do this, what do we do?
Okay, let me ask Tom about this, because you heard Sunil say a little while ago that of course there are going to be challenges, there's going to be bumps in the road, but none of them, as he foresees them, are so significant to not even try. He says it's worth I know you don't like the word experimentation, but it's worth giving it a shot. Can you sign on to that it's at least worth giving it a shot?
So, I mean, I think that there's several questions. One is it worth experimenting? Yes. Is it worth, is it good to see local governments taking initiative and doing something different? Yes. And that's how a lot of things happen in this country. It's like different areas try it and other people learn from it. But I guess it does come back to me to for Uber, they want to be part of the infrastructure. They want to buy in, and this is a foot in the door for them. And that's my concern. I mean, how your deal will work out, who knows? We shall see. But I think a template where Uber is a complement or a substitute for a public transit system is a very bad idea. I mean, number one, they're not, as you'll see if you look at their license agreement, Uber is not a provider of transit services. It says they will not take responsibility for what happens on an Uber ride. And I think
because they're not a transportation service, they are a what?
They say we are, we basically match riders with drivers. Anything after that, that's up to the rider and up to the driver.
They're a technology company.
That's what they would say. But as a judge in the UK said recently, if you've got $11 billion invested on moving people from A to B, I think it's fair to say you're in the transportation business.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, let me try this. Can you please put us in the room? I want you to put us in, because I presume at some point you town councilors got together, privately, away from the cameras, when it came time to making a hard and fast decision on this. And somebody at some point said, okay, Uber's made the best bid here, and we want to go forward with this. But you know that they have had some PR problems in the past, and you know that we are going to probably take it on the chin from some people on this when we sign a deal with them. How do those conversations go?
So first of all, any types of conversations like that, any time that that council is advancing business, it is always in public. We are the most public and transparent level of government there is, and we don't have those types of backroom discussions. We have it out in the public. We ask the stupid questions sometimes, but that's part of just being in government.
You have some personnel. You do personnel decisions in private?
We have a very limited amount of things that we're allowed to discuss in private, and this would not be one of them.
All of the discussions about whether to go with Uber took place in public for people to hear and see.
Exactly. So we first heard about this last year in the budget when staff came back and with the fixed transit, and we had debate after debate after debate about whether or not we could afford to do it. We looked at some of our neighbors, and people would come and start. I started even counting how many people were in buses and in smaller communities to see whether or not it was feasible and affordable. And we learned from other people what their budgets were. We came back in the end and we decided that we couldn't afford to go through with the fixed rate, and we sent staff back to think of something else, to look at it another way. And they did. And when they came back, they had the citizens group, and it was our staff who originally met with Uber.
Did nobody at any point in the discussion say, Uber, PR problems, optics problems, what are we going to do about that? Did that come up?
Staff assured us that everybody that they have dealt with so far has been very professional and cooperative, and that there has been no problem. The town of Innisville and all municipalities partner with all types of different organizations and businesses. In our town, we have a rec center that is operated by the YMCA. Other towns have their water and wastewater systems that are operated by another organization. So you put the business of the town in those people's hands, and certainly they're held to a certain standard, and we will hold them to that standard. But it's hard to say, well, somebody read this in the paper, so we're going to mark an X against you right away. We're going to work from experience. So far, it's been a positive experience. If it becomes not a positive experience, we will deal with it.
Well, let me follow up with Sunil on that, because, of course, no disrespect to Innisfil, but Innisfil is a town in the province of Ontario with 36,000 people, and Uber's a multi-billion-dollar corporate organization. And, you could argue that if push comes to shove, this may not be a fair fight. Do you worry about David versus Goliath here?
A little bit, but quite honestly, Toronto's in a partnership with Uber and other companies like it. They've regulated them into allowing them to operate. And quite honestly,
after a huge stink, Sunil,
Yes.
after massive protests.
But Innisfil's in a situation where if I had gone to my high school dances, which I didn't, I wouldn't have been that picky about who would dance with me. I would take who would come and say, okay, I'll dance with you. I think that's the situation. You looked.
Has it gotten better for you on the dance floor?
A little bit. But the issue here is they put out an open tender, and Uber is the one who came in with a deal. So, you can't really fault the town for saying, well, we didn't have 40 great options on the table. We had one option. It works. They have a good algorithm. And we have to see how it's going to play out. But absolutely, I mean, there's a bit of a power differential here in terms of what are they going to be willing to share with the town. If the terms of trade aren't ultimately favorable for Uber, they won't hesitate to pull out of the agreement. I mean, they're not going to kind of say, well, we've got a deal with a small town and we're committed to it no matter what. All of these things are issues. But again, I'm not going to stop flying on airplanes because of what happened with United recently. So again, we can't just fixate on this is an Uber situation. This is about what are the options for people in towns and cities across Canada. 400,000 people in Toronto use Uber every day. And Toronto is, relatively speaking, inundated with transit options. So obviously people see that there's something there that they like, whether it's cost, whether it's convenience, whether it's a combination of those factors. So transit authorities, governments, policymakers have to start thinking about, well, if people are turning to Uber, given all of their baggage, maybe we need to think about what are we doing wrong here and how do we meet people's needs better?
Well, Marcy, I wonder if at the end of the day, that's not the point. As much as you might prefer a bus service, because it's a real sort of normal, conventional public transit option.
Oh.
Can I put it that way? This is different, and the math seems compelling. Fair point?
No, I think it's a fair point, and I think most progressive transportation organizations, transportation planners would say that ride sharing is part of the mix. Is certainly part of the mix in a master transportation plan. I think let's not. So Innisfil is a small town now. Innisfil's a growing town. I mean, the last 5 years it grew by 17%. The population grew by 17%. That's well above average, and it's within an hour commuter shed of the metropolitan Toronto area.
Well, I should say, in 15 years, you're going to be almost twice as big.
Absolutely, and so it's the longer term that I think is needed. The shorter term investments need to align with the longer term kind of transportation investments. And so I think you just want to make sure that the data that you're getting is going to inform those sorts of decision making. And I think that's a really important part. Not to mention that transportation infrastructure often aligns with good land use planning, essentially. And so you're talking about, folks who there's no sidewalks to walk on. Is that a better investment than the $100,000 kind of subsidies that go to anybody who's riding anywhere? So I think that those are the kinds of decisions that municipalities certainly have to look at. But there's definitely a synergy between how you look at your transportation infrastructure long term and how your community grows and is accessible to all sorts of residents.
Sunil.
I absolutely agree with Marcy that long-term thinking and planning is required, but what do you say to that kid who's got to get to hockey practice now? Keep walking 5 kilometers, dragging your 30-pound bag with you? I don't really think that's a feasible option. And the benefit of these ride sourcing type of models is there's no capital infrastructure investment required. You don't have to buy a bus. You're leveraging cars that already exist in your town and your city, and you're matching people who want to drive with somebody who needs a ride. So it's a much more cost-effective, in theory, model because you're not having to spend $100,000 on a bus. You're not having to pay drivers a full-time salary, a pension, so on and so forth. There are obviously lots of questions around what that does in terms of fair working practices, labor standards, and so on. But purely from an economic cost-effectiveness, convenience point of view, these models have a huge amount to offer, and we shouldn't ignore that.
Last couple of minutes here, and I want to, one question to each of you here. What if this works? Would you reevaluate your concerns about Uber?
So I think let's think what works means, right? What works means is it means a safe system. It means one where demand is met, right? Where people can get rides repeatedly and quickly, which has not been shown, right, for Uber in low density areas. And where it's sustainable, which is to say not running on Uber's capital and putting lots of money in and taking a loss on every ride, because that's an easy way to get a lot of rides, is to take a loss on every ride. So if it comes through there, I think I'm going to continue to be skeptical, right? I'm going to continue to be skeptical because this is part of it's not even just about transit. I mean, there's a lot of effort around what do you do with smart cities, what do you do with city infrastructure. Google wants to put Wi-Fi, or wants to put new new cabling through different cities, and they've put them in, and then they've backed out. So I think it's an ongoing conversation, and I think it'll be quite a while before I change my mind.
Let me say, that sounded like a no. Let's give the last minute here to Lynn Dolan. This starts when, and what are your expectations and hopes for it?
So we're starting May 1st, and I'm hoping that we roll through that first 100,000 in a few months, because that'll mean it's successful and it's working well. We're looking forward to the social interaction between the people who are driving and the people who are riding. Maybe their kids go to the same school. Maybe they're learning more about a new studio that's opened up. Maybe they become friends. We're looking forward to kids being able to get from high school to the rec center instead of hanging out in the Tim Hortons parking lot. We're looking for, it's a made in Innisfil solution. If we could wipe the slate clean and build a community now, it wouldn't probably look the way it looks today, but our communities are historic and we're proud of them. And we want everybody to be able to get around, particularly within Innisfil, and shop locally and use the local businesses. And this is a made in Innisfil solution. It is not forever, I don't believe. I think we will. When we will grow into a more traditional system. But for stage one, this is the public transit system that we're going to offer for people, and it's at the right price.
And that's our time. I want to thank those who have come from near and far to be with us today. Lynn Dolan and Tom Slee, who came from far, Waterloo and Innisfil, and Marcy Birchfield and Sunil Johal, who came from close by, I think, to be with us today. And I hope you both took public transit to get here.
Absolutely.
I did.
Good stuff. All right. I have this strange sense of deja vu, having done this discussion before, but it must just be me. Okay. Thanks, everybody. That's a little in-joke at home. Never mind. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.